Have you ever been somewhere that just felt wrong? A place where the very air around you is thick with dread and every instinct screams for you to leave. This is not a made-up ghost story, not something from a horror movie. What I'm about to tell you is real, and I hope you'll stay with me until the end. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that some places are haunted not just by spirits, but by the darkness itself. It started with an invitation, a weekend at an old secluded inn in the countryside. My friend Nick, who I hadn't seen in years, had inherited it from his uncle. The inn was over a century old, surrounded by dense forest and steeped in local legend. He wanted me and a few friends to come down, check it out, and hopefully get the place ready for renovations. I thought it would be fun, an escape from the daily grind. I didn't believe in ghosts or curses, and I wasn't one to turn down a little adventure. So I packed my bag and drove out of town, the excitement bubbling in my chest. The drive was long and winding, the roads narrowing the deeper I went into the countryside. The trees seemed to close in, their gnarled branches stretching over the road like skeletal fingers. When I finally arrived, the inn loomed before me, dark and foreboding. It looked like something out of a horror novel, tall, creaky, and shadowed in twilight. But when Nick greeted me with a big grin, my nerves eased. We were just here for some laughs, right? We gathered in the main hall as Nick gave us a quick tour. The place was a labyrinth of old woodwork, narrow hallways, and eerie paintings of people who looked like they were glaring at us from the past. We laughed it off, joking about how spooky it was. But one of the locals, a caretaker named Ed, pulled me aside. "Be careful," he said, his voice a low whisper. "This place has secrets. His uncle, he saw things here, things that drove him mad. Don't go near the basement no matter what you hear." I laughed nervously, assuming it was just a local scare tactic. But Ed's haunted eyes told a different story. It was the kind of look you can't fake. He had seen something. Still, I brushed it off as a campfire story and joined the others as we settled in for the night. The unease begins. That night, I woke up to a sound I couldn't ignore. It was faint at first, but unmistakable. A scratching noise coming from just outside my door. I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound grew louder, scraping along the wood in a steady rhythm. I got out of bed, telling myself it was just a mouse or maybe Nick playing a prank. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but a chill ran down my spine. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I stepped out, and then I heard it. The sound of whispering, barely audible, like a hushed conversation just out of reach. I couldn't make out any words, but the tone was chilling, like they were talking about me. I quickly went back to my room, locking the door behind me. Sleep was out of the question, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. But just as I was starting to calm down, the whispering returned, this time closer, louder, as if it was just on the other side of the wall. By morning, my nerves were frayed, but I kept it to myself. I didn't want to seem paranoid or ruin the weekend. The others seemed oblivious, laughing over breakfast, planning a hike. But Nick looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. He pulled me aside, asking if I'd heard anything strange during the night. He hadn't slept either, hearing the same whispers, the scratching. We decided to explore the inn during the day, hoping to find a rational explanation. We started in the basement, the one place Ed had warned us about. The stairs creaked underfoot as we descended. The air grew thick, cold, and stale as we reached the bottom. The basement was an expansive, dusty room with flickering lights, filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. But as we moved deeper, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, a tension that seemed to cling to my skin. At the far end of the room, we found a door, a small old wooden door with a rusted latch. Nick hesitated, but I felt compelled to open it. Inside was a tiny pitch-black room, and the stench was overwhelming. We turned on our flashlights, illuminating the walls covered in strange symbols, smeared in what looked like dried blood. A chill ran down my spine as I realized these symbols weren't random. They were warnings, wards against something that had been sealed away. Then we saw it, a small tattered notebook lying in the corner. Nick picked it up, flipping through its pages, his face paling with each line he read. It was his uncle's journal, detailing his slow descent into madness. He wrote about the whispers, the scratching, and a presence that lurked in the basement, something that watched him, growing stronger every day. His final entry read, "I tried to lock it away, but it wants to be free. It's hungry and it won't be trapped forever." Suddenly we heard footsteps above us, echoing through the floorboards, heavy, deliberate footsteps, like someone was pacing. We knew everyone else was outside. Panic set in as we sprinted back up the stairs, bursting into the empty hall. The footsteps stopped, but the air felt charged, as if something was there, watching us. Then the lights flickered, and the whispers returned, louder, angrier. We could feel a pressure building, pressing down on us like a physical weight. Shadows began to move, slithering along the walls, converging toward us. Nick grabbed my arm and we bolted out the door, running into the open air, gasping for breath. But the inn wasn't done with us. As we stood outside, catching our breath, I felt a pull, a compulsion to turn back. And when I looked up at the windows, I saw them. Dark, shadowy figures staring down at us from behind the glass. There must have been a dozen, maybe more, all of them watching us with hollow eyes. Ed approached, his face solemn. "I warned you," he said, voice laced with regret. "Some places have darkness too deep to escape. This inn, it takes people. It took his uncle, and it's taken many before him." We didn't go back inside. We couldn't. Nick decided to sell the place, to leave it for someone else to deal with. And as for me, I thought I could leave the horror behind. But to this day, I still hear the whispers. They come at night, when everything's quiet, scratching and whispering from the darkest corners of my room. I'm telling you this because some things stay with you even when you think you've escaped. Some places hold onto your soul, no matter how far you run. So if you ever feel that pull toward the dark, that chill from a place that seems to be watching you, trust your instincts. Because once the darkness finds you, it may never let you go.